G'day guys, Socket here. Today we're going to continue on with our REW EQ Wizard car audio tuning tutorial series, and today we're going to have a look at house curves. So this is step 4 in the car audio tuning process, and so far what we've done is set up our equipment, taken some full range measures, set the crossovers and level matched everything, and now we're ready to set the house curves to form the target shapes that we're going to use when we move on to EQ. So up to this point, you could have been using a USB mic with pink noise and doing a moving mic sort of measurements. You could have been using an analog microphone and taking sweeps, or you could have been using a USB microphone and taking sweeps. It doesn't really matter how you took your measurements. How you set house curves and do your EQ work is the same regardless of which process you've been following so far. So with all of that said, let's dive in. Okay, so here we are back in REW. I've uploaded the analog sweep measures from episode 11. So these are the measures after we've put the crossovers in and after we've done the level matching, and we're kind of ready to start doing EQ work. So if you're following along with your own measures, it's the measurements after you've put your crossovers in. And if you remember back to episode 11, we used a house curve, or we created and used a house curve to basically level match all of our speakers along a target line. So we ran through the middle of the tweeters and through the middle of the mids, and then from 250 we had a 6 dB per octave rise, where we level matched the mid bass and the front sub and the rear sub. And so when we go to do our EQ work, we'll end up cutting all this stuff out, and anything above the line will get cut, anything below the line will get boosted, and our tune should follow the black target curve. And that's exactly what a house curve is. It is a target line to allow you to shape your car audio tune or a speaker response. In fact, that's where the name house curve comes from. It was from the home audio guys, and is used to describe I followed a particular house curve and it gave my room or my system a particular sound. And so studios like JL and others came up with their own house curves to give their equipment or people using their house curve a particular EQ sound or response. So this black line here is an overall house curve. But we also need house curves for individual speakers. So let me just get rid of everything and let me bring up the right tweeter. So this was a measure after the crossover was put in. So this tweeter has a 3300 Linkwitz Riley 24 dB slope crossover, and so I've created a house curve or a target curve to shape this tweeter, and it is at a target level of 70 with a 3300 crossover with a Linkwitz Riley 24 dB. So if I want the tweeter to play that kind of response, I use EQ when we come to that part to shape the response of the speaker to fit this curve. And then of course you create target curves for the other speakers in your system, and when you apply the house curve, you can see that these all line up to meet that overarching house curve. And so the idea in EQ is that you're shaping all of your speakers so that they all follow these target lines to create your car audio tune. So next I want to talk about the characteristics of house curves. Here on the screen I have a dead flat line at 0 dB, and if I was doing home audio work, I'd probably want to aim for something like this, where I want a flat response. Now in car audio, if we do that, the tune would sound terrible because there wouldn't be enough bass in the tune. So you typically find that home audio, sorry, that car audio tunes have what we call a low frequency rise, so to add more bass to the tune, and more often than not will have what they call a high frequency cut to get rid of some of the harshness in the top end or the tweeters that people describe as sounding sharp or bright or fatiguing on their ears. So to look at some of the more popular house curves that are available for that you can download, there is what we call the JL house curve. So typical high frequency cut from about 3,500 and a low frequency rise from about 200. So this is adding bass and this is cutting out some of the top end. So that's the JL one, and then of course there are others. There is the half whittlage, which kind of slopes all the way, or slopes all the way up through to adding some extra bass, and then there is the Harmon, which has a few bumps and things along the way. But the that characteristic of a boost in the low frequencies and a cut in the high frequencies is quite common, and there are others like the Hanatsu or the Crutchfield, and none of these are. There is no such thing as the ideal house curve, because a house curve and how it sounds is a matter of personal preference. So clearly, if you're looking at these two house curves, you're going to have a lot more bass on the Hanatsu house curve compared to the Crutchfield house curve, right? And it just depends on whether you're a bass head or not, right? But you certainly, if you're a bass head, you probably wouldn't be using the Crutchfield curve. Now, all of that said, I personally prefer to use the house curve that we looked at before, where it is flat all the way through to about 200, and then we have a certain amount of rise in the low frequency bass area. Now, I personally like a 6 dB rise per octave from 200 or 250 because I like a more bassy tune. But the standard rise is probably 3 to 4 dB per octave is probably more typical, but once again it's a matter of personal preference. Now, the reason I don't like a cut at the high frequency end is because I think that it loses too much sparkle at the top end. If it's a bit fatiguing on your ears, you can sometimes put a bit of a scoop out here between sort of 1,000 and 2,500 to 3,000. That often helps with a bit of, if it's a bit too harsh on your ears. But as I said, there is no perfect house curve. It's all a matter of personal preference. All right, so let's go and have a look at how you import some house curves. So you might decide that you're going to try out the half whittlage or the JBL or whatever house curve, and you've downloaded it. The only thing I want to point out is that you want to make sure that you download it in what we call text format, TXT, where the frequencies are down one side and the boost and cuts are down the other side. So that's the standard text format. But once you have your file, you can get it into REW a couple of ways. One way is to click on File, Import Frequency Response. Grab the file that you want and click Open, and there you go. That's the way you import a house curve. Or if you have your file somewhere, you can literally sort of grab them and just drag and drop them into REW just like that. But one of the disadvantages of downloading these overarching tuning house curves is that they don't come with the house curves for the individual speakers. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways of dealing with that. Starting with a tool that I like to use, which is called Jazzy's Tuning Companion, which is made by, I don't know, some guy who's developed this in Excel. It's a really simple program. It comes in different flavors, so you can, if you only got like a two-way system, or you can create your house curves here, or a three-way system. And you can choose a type of house curve, such as half-width lidge or a custom, do your own. And what it allows you to do is basically put in the crossover frequencies for your different speakers and your slopes. So you might want a Riley 12 dB slope instead of a 24 dB slope, or you might want to put in a Butterworth slope at 24 dB or whatever. So this allows you to customize your own target curves, and then you click on export text files, and I'm going to put them in there, and what's it say? Ready to go? Yes, thank you very much. And then when we go into the folder, you can see that what it's done is it's given me the overall house curve plus my house curves for my mid bass, sub and tweeters. And if I go into REW and I open them up now, and I should be able to pretty much just drag them all in like that. And if I go to all SPL, clear all the selections, go right down to the bottom and then select all the curves, you'll see that we have the overarching house curve in green, tweeters in orange, mids in red, mid bass in green, and then our sub in blue, and we're pretty much ready to go. So that is the Jazzy's tuning companion for REW. Just punch it into Google or your favorite search bar, and you'll be able to find and download that yourself. So that is certainly another way of getting house curves created. But because this is a REW tutorial series, I want to show you how to do them in REW. Okay, to create house curves in REW, we're going to be using the EQ tool, which is located up here in the header. So we're just going to click the button and do a quick tour. So the EQ tool is made up of 2 display windows and a bunch of pull downs. We're not really interested in the lower window today, so we can just click on this down arrow to get rid of it. In the main display, we have the measurements that we have selected, in this case the left tweeter full range, and a target line, and it's the target line that we're interested in today. So we can just turn off these other displays and we can just focus on the target line. So the house curve tool is located here under target settings. So we click that pull down, and let me just walk you through all of these things, starting with the first pull down, which is the target type. So this allows you to select the type of house curve that you want to create. So the first one is called a full range speaker. Now remember, REW is made for the home audio guys. For us, this means an overarching or a full range house curve, running from 20 Hertz to 20,000 Hertz, or the full sound spectrum. So that is the first type of tool we have available. Then we have the next one, which is bass limited, which is code for a tweeter, house curve tool for tweeters, and then the next one is subwoofers, which is a house curve for subwoofers, and then finally we have the speaker driver tool, which is for creating house curves for speakers that have 2 crossovers, such as a mid bass, a front sub, those types of things. But even though we have both the tweeter and subwoofer house curve tools available, we won't be using them. And the reason for this, as Andre pointed out, who's one of our viewers, is that these tools allow you to change the slope of the house curve, so from 24 to 12 or whatever, but they default to a Butterworth slope, and you're unable to really change them. So that's not very helpful for us, so we're going to use the speaker driver tool for all of our individual speaker house curves, because it allows us not only to change the slope but also the type of crossover that we want to use. So the way that this tool works is you put in the high pass and low pass crossovers. So in this case we've got a crossover of 150 and a crossover of 2000, and we're using Riley 24 dB slopes. and we could change that to a Butterworth 12 dB slope, or a bezel 12 dB slope, or bezel, a really steep one like a bezel 8th order. But the ones that we'll be using for our tune is the LR4s, or Linkowitz-Riley 24 dB. So that's how this speaker driver tool works. But just a bit of a pro tip: if you're creating your house curves and you always put the lowest number in first and the highest number in second. So if you do it the other way around, let's say I put in 2000 first and then 150, you'll notice that the house curve disappears. It's actually not gone, it's just way down here. And so if this ever happens to you and you're wondering where's my curve gone, it's because you've entered in the values in the incorrect order. So we want to go 150 and 2000, and it's back. So just a bit of a tip. All right, but we're first of all going to create a overarching house curve for our tune. So we're going to want to select the full range tool, and you can see we've got a nice straight line. And so we want to add a rim curve, so we'll click on that, and now you can see the typical house curve shape that we've talked about before, with a low frequency rise for the bass and a high frequency cut or fall for the treble. And these are the controls that you use to shape your curve. So first of all, you can start off with the frequency at which the rise for the bass starts. So for our tune, we're going to set that at 250. So you can see at 250 the bass will start to rise. It will end at 20 Hertz, and I think you can change that to 10 or something like that. Yeah, but 20 is fine. And then this controls the steepness of the slope, so, or how much bass you want to add to your tune. So if you want it super crazy, you can add 6 dB, right? Typical car audio tune or SQ audio tune is 3, maybe 4 dB per octave rise. Excuse me. Just be aware that the higher you set this number, the harder it is to get your measurements to match the house curve shape. So we'll be using 3 for our tune going forward today. So that's the low end, or the low frequency rise end of your house curve. And then on the other end, you've got the high frequency fall or cut. Once again, you can put in the frequency for which when you want that to sort of start. So I'll change that, for example, to 8000, and you might want to cut a 2 dB cut, or in some people might actually want to add a bit more brightness to the end of their tune and put a negative number in here to actually get a rise at the end of the end of their tune. I personally like to leave this set at 0 and just have it flat. I find that putting a cut in, for me, cuts out a lot of sparkle and brightness in the tune. Some people add a cut because they find that the high end is quite fatiguing or shouty, and you can put a cut in certainly, or alternatively cut 2 or 3 dB out of this range between 1000 and 2500 Hertz. So that's the high frequency fall, and then finally there is your target level. So this is the level at which you have done your level matching for your speakers. I think we are going to set the target level at 50 for this tune. Oops, wrong one. So we'll just change this target level to 50. Fabulous. So now that we have our target level designed, we can then target level. Now that we have our house curve designed, we can now click on Generate Measure from Target Shape, and that will put a new measurement down on the bottom of our measurement list, and we can now give that a name like sockets house curve, right? Whatever. And I always like to color that black so it stands out, and there you can see our house curve sort of running through here. Now I lifted the tweeters a little bit and I lifted the mids to avoid all of this sort of clunkiness going on. Here are the mid bass, here is the front sub, here is the rear sub, from all the level matching work that we did. And you might find that you need to tweak your levels a little bit, or change your crossovers a little bit, just to get everything to sort of work together. But we'll work that out as we go along. Now, one very important thing I need to mention is that these settings, or this setting, this add room curve, and all of these settings here, as you go from speaker to speaker and you're setting up your house curves or you're doing your EQ work, you need to make sure that these are always exactly the same in every window. I do this a heap. I forgot to, instead of being 250, this is 200, or instead of being 50, this is 55, or sometimes I don't even have it turned on, and I'm scratching my head going, oh, how come that's at the wrong level, or how come this thing's not, how come this measurement's not lining up with the crossover? And 9 times out of 10 it'll be because I've got the wrong setting transferred or copied over. So it will happen to you, and it is super frustrating. So if you're running into any problems, the first thing you should do is go back and check that your settings are correct. Now, some of you that know this tool pretty well will say, but hey Socket, there's a setting in preferences where you can put set all this stuff to a default, and that is correct. In the equalizer tab in preferences, there is this thing where you can set the the management slopes and the cutoffs and all of this type of stuff as a default for your full range speakers or whatever. I tend to find that certainly my experience is that it doesn't always work, and so when I've relied on that, I've inevitably lost a lot of time because something has gone wrong or hasn't transferred across properly. So I can't emphasize this enough. As I said, it will happen to you. Don't worry, everybody does it, but it is really important to transfer these to each of your speaker EQ work as you go along. All right, so with all of that said, let's move on and do the tweeters. All right, let's get rid of all of these measurements and bring up the house curve and the right and left tweeters. Now you want to work with the measurements that have the crossovers in them, not the full range measurements. So here are the two tweeters, 24 dB slope with 3300 crossover. Now you only need one house curve per pair, and so it doesn't really matter which speaker you choose to do your house curve in. I'd like to choose the ugliest of the pair, because if you can get that to work with a house curve, the good looking measurement will work no problems. So if I was to choose one between these two, I'd probably choose this purple one because of the spike here and the dip here and all that stuff, and that happens to be the right tweeter. So I'm going to click on the right tweeter and then click on EQ, and let's open that up. And so the first thing we want to do is just check that all of our settings are correct. So the add room curve is on, but once again these are wrong, so it should be 250, 3, 0, and my target line is 50. Now these are my settings. Whatever your settings for your system that you'll work out, they're the numbers you want to put in. Don't copy mine, but just make sure they're the same in every window. So that's done. Now we're going to go and we are creating a tweeter house curve. So what we want to do is turn off, I think it's this bottom one. Turn off the bottom one. Yep, that looks right. And then put in the frequency, which is 3300, and then put in the crossover type, which is a Linkwitz-Riley 24 dB or an LR4. And there we have it. We have our target curve for our tweeters. So we can now just generate measurement from target, and it will be down here as a new measurement in your list. And so we can call that tweeter house curve 3300 crossover at 50 decibels in level. Okay, that's great. So, and I might just change the color because it's too close to the colors of the measurements. And there you can see the house curve and the two measurements. And in fact, if we go back into the EQ window, an easy way to check is to just click on the measurement and just see how well it lines up. So it's not exactly perfect, but to EQ it, when we come to that work, we'll just push this out a little bit and it should EQ up just fine. All right, so that's the tweeters done. Right, now we'll move on to the mids. So once again, we'll get rid of all the measurements, open up the mid-range measures, and so here is the left in red and the right in green. We've got a 175 hertz crossover and a 3300 hertz crossover to match with the tweeters. Once again, we just need one house curve for the pair. Looking at the two of them, the red one looks the worst, so that's the left mid-range. So we'll select the left mid-range and we'll go into the EQ tool and open that up. And once again, check the settings, the first thing you should do. So we need to turn that on. Now my settings are 250, 3, 0 and 50. Okay, and now we want to set up the settings for the house curve. So it's a speaker driver. We want to first set the slopes, so Linkage Riley LR4s, and we want to put in our crossovers, so 175 and 3300. Okay, and there we have it. That's the crossovers for our mids, and once again, just checking the measurement. Is it outside of the other slopes, outside of the curves? Yep, looks pretty good. If they're not, it's no big deal because we can fix that when we're doing the EQ work, but it's just a rough check to make sure that you're not, the house curve's not sitting way over here to the left or completely off the screen somewhere. Okay, that's the whole point, just doing the double check. All right, so that's now the mids, so we can generate measurement from target shape, and so this will be mid house curve 175 to 3300 at 50 dB. Fantastic. So once again, REW makes it the same color as the one of the measurements, so I will change that to something different. Great, so that's the mid done. So let's move on to the mid bass. All right, so it's the same process. We clear all the selections, bring up the house curve, bring up the left and right mid bass, and let's pick on the speaker that looks the worst, which in this case is the red one, or the red mid bass. Sorry, the right mid bass. So we select that, click on the EQ tool, open that up, check our settings. So that should be 50, 3, 0, and that's set correctly. And then start doing our house curve. So speaker driver, we want these to be Linkage Riley 24 dB slopes. We want the crossover to run from 100 to 175 are the two crossover settings. And that is our house curve. And you'll notice straight away that the slopes of the measurement are inside the house curve, and that's okay. We'll fix all of that up when we do the EQ work, so don't worry about that just yet. So we can now generate a measurement from the target, and there it is in orange. So we'll call that mid bass, house curve 100 to 175. Whoops, 100 to 175 at 50 dB. Okay, so now one thing that you'll probably notice is that the house curve is not touching the overarching house curve anymore. and it needs to be lifted. So we can fix that now. So we're currently at 48. We want it to be 53, so that's a difference of 5. So what we'll do is make sure we're still in the right mid bass, go to EQ, change the target from 50 to 55, and generate a measure from the target, and there it is. Okay, we have a new measure, and so that'll be mid bass, house curve 100 to 175, and this will be 55 dB now. Okay, and we can get rid of the old measurement, and there's our new house curve. And once again, change the color. Okie doke, so that's the mid bass done, and it's actually made the whole EQ work a little bit worse, but as I said, we'll fix that up when we come to doing EQ. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the front sub. So once again, we'll just clear everything, house curve, bring up the front sub. It's in line with the house curve. When we level match it, that's great. We select the front sub, it's 100 to 55. Click on EQ, should be used to it by now. Make sure it's turned on. 250 3050, and we want a speaker driver, LR4 LR4s, and it's 55 to 100. Fantastic. Alright, so we can generate measure from target, and there is the front sub target curve. We can turn that off, and once again it needs to be lifted a little bit, so 51 through to 55.6, so maybe it's easier to do it this way. So with the this is front sub house curve 55 to 100 at 50 dB. If we have it selected and we go to actions, measurement actions, it will automatically show up as the measurement that we want to change, and we can scroll up until it touches, and it's 4.5. So we add 4.5 onto our target. So click on front sub, go to EQ, make that 54.5, generate target, and now we have it in the right place. So this will be front sub, house curve 55, 100, 54.5 dB. Okay, fantastic. All right, we'll get rid of the old measure. So that's now the front sub done as well, and that just leaves us with the rear sub. So let's go do that. Okay, once again, let's clear out the selections. Whoops, there we go. Bring up the house curve and bring up the rear sub measure. Select rear sub from the list. Go to the EQ tool. Open up the window and check all the settings. So you need to turn that on and make the usual adjustments. That and this. And then we want a speaker driver now. We just want the subwoofer driver, the subwoofer slope. So we need to turn off, I think it's this one. Yes, okay, so it's making the usual subwoofer slope. So we turn off the top high pass, and we want that slope to be an LR4, and we want our crossover to be 55. And you'll see that it's not a million miles away from the slope of the rear sub with the crossover put into it. So that's fantastic. So let's generate measurement from target, and we can go in and give that a name. So this will be rear sub house curve 55 crossover at 50 dB. Okay, and that is meeting the target line really nicely. So some of you with a sharp eye might be saying, well, hang on, Socket, what happened? With the mid bass and the front sub, they ended up at a lower point. How come we don't have to adjust the rear sub target curve? And the answer to that is with the, let's say the front sub, it has two crossovers. So when you have two crossovers, they tend to pull the volume of the speaker down. So the front sub and the mid bass, same thing. So we had to adjust them. But the rear sub only has one crossover. And so if we go back into the EQ and I take out the this rise, you'll see it at the moment it's at 60. We've got a target level of 50. But if I take this rise out and make that 0, the target level is now lined up with the 50 that we have here, right? So it's this rise that is, because we're asking REW to add a 3 dB per octave rise, and we're right at the end of the slope, and there's no other crossover to bring that down. That's why it's following the crossover of the rear sub, and we don't have to make any final adjustments. So with the rear sub done, that means that we have our front sub, our mid bass, our mids, and our tweeters. All of our house curves are now set. We've clearly got a bit of EQ work to do, and that will be our next episode. But this is by far one of the trickiest things to do that we've done to date, and lots of opportunities to make mistakes. But if you find yourself a little bit lost, or you're wondering why things not turning out the way they should, don't worry, happens to us all. Just make sure that you are EQing the right speaker, so you've selected the right speaker on the list, that your settings in your EQ target setting window are correct, that you're maybe entering in the high pass or low pass crossovers in the wrong order. That often happens. One tip is that sometimes you'll see that, let me just change this to 600 and this to 8000. Sometimes you'll get this type of thing going on in the screen where it's kind of all grayed out, and you're going, oh, how come it's all grayed out? Well, under filter tasks, there's a range that you can set, so you can make it 20 to 20,000. We'll cover this in the next tutorial, but you can see that between 20 and 20,000, all that grayness has gone out. So if you've got that problem on your screen, it's just this filter range that you need to go and deal with. The other one that can often trip you up is this setting up here. Often it'll be clicked like that, and you're wondering what the hell's going on. This is logarithmic versus linear setting. That can also be a problem. If you can't find the graphs at all, often clicking up here and clicking fit to data will bring whatever you're working on back in screen as well. But yeah, there's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of settings. It's not easy to make a mistake, but don't get frustrated. You can just delete your last target curve and have another go. You will get there eventually. But anyway, guys, I hope that helped you out. Once again, thanks very much for watching, and I look forward to catching you all in the next episode when we're going to cover off on EQ.